We, the family, are saddened to announce the death of our beloved Joan Morgan, better known as Jean of Cicero Castries, who passed away at the Victoria Hospital on Saturday, October 21st, 2017, at 12:10 p.m. She was 58 years old. She was predeceased by her father, James Morgan, also known as Mr. KK, and her mother, Marie Larcher Morgan, also known as Gertrude or Ma KK. Left to mourn her 14 children, Mrs. Wendy Caroline Emmanuel of Canada, Mrs. Yolanda Judy James, employed with the Norwegian Cruise Line, Daniel Kurt Morgan, employed with Bionic Building Group, Stacey Morgan of Rockhall, Siobhan Dwight Morgan of Cicero, Christy Morgan of Canada, Mrs. Tara Kaya Paul of Canada, Mrs. Charlene Allen of Canada, Peter Edwin Morgan, student of Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Gina Cassandra Morgan, chef at Sandals Grant, Brad Ross Morgan of Cicero, Corinne Diana Morgan, student of Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Levi Jamal Morgan, student of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Clayton Darion Morgan, a mechanical engineer at Lucelec. Her common-law husband, Anthony Jacob of Cicero. 11 grandchildren: Tyra Morgan, a student of the Leon Hess Secondary School, Carifa Emmanuel of Canada, Leander Johnson of Canada, Christopher Emmanuel of Canada, Adriano Morgan, student of the Cyrus Simmons Secondary School, Dante Morgan, student of the Vidbutey Primary School, Siobhan Morgan, student of the Methodist School, Emma Watson of Canada, Shania Allen of Canada, Shaylee Allen of Canada, Chrislyn Emmanuel of Canada, her adopted son, Eustace Mathra, better known as Clever of Cicero, sons-in-law, Christopher Emmanuel of Canada, Kervin St. Catherine of Rockhall, Gary Paul of Canada, Ali Allen of Canada, Hassan Leonard James, employed with Norwegian Cruise Line, Kevin Watson of Canada, and Justin Charles of Cicero. Her daughters-in-law, Christine Justin of Millet, Mrs. Lisa Morgan of Canada, Nicole Henry of the Morn, Nikrisa Leos of La Panse. Her 5 brothers, Reverend Daniel Morgan of Texas, Dr. Reverend Peter Morgan, pastor at the Vieux Community Baptist Church, Julian Morgan, Reuben Morgan, and Protus Morgan, all of New York. 5 sisters, Mrs. Agatha Wilson of Monrepo, Mrs. Doris Ann Marie Hippolyte of Pave, Mrs. Joyce Ann Eugene of Cicero, Lucille Morgan of New York, Marie O'Neill Morgan of Canada. 16 nieces, Miranda Morgan of the United States, Mrs. Leona Powell of the United States, Dr. Alicia Eugene of Corinth, Mrs. Samantha Glasgow of New York, Mrs. Jeannie Morgan Raphael of Carolee Gardens, Public Health Nursing Supervisor, Leah Morgan of New York, Mrs. Louise Morgan Hall of New York, Hannah Morgan of New York, Mrs. Anna George of England, Eunice Wilson of the United States, Mary Jane Morgan of Pave, Mrs. Janice Papin of Cicero, Mrs. Lissa Rogers of New York, Sheena Mondesi of Canada, Crystal Mondesi and Natasha O'Neill, all of Canada. 22 nephews, Patrick Eugene of Cicero, Elijah Eugene of the United States, Thomas Eugene of the United States, Wayne Eugene of Baltimore, Maryland, Jonathan Eugene of Cicero, Gaius Wilson of Florida, Silas Wilson of Monrepo, Timothy Wilson of Rodney Bay, Titus Wilson of Canada, Douglas Morgan of Cicero, Randolph Morgan of Florida, Tony Morgan, better known as Simos of Pave, Sergeant Alex Morgan of Pave, Curtis Morgan of Grand Riviere, Hubert Morgan of Cicero, Glenn Morgan, better known as Gearbox or Lion of Cicero, employee of Windjammer Landing, Kim Morgan of Canada, Malcolm Morgan of New York, Tyler Morgan and Theo Morgan, all of New York, Winston Mondesi of Canada, who was also her godson, Nathaniel O'Neill of Canada, her brothers-in-law, Abel Wilson of Monrepo, Torrance Hippolyte of St. Croix, Joseph Eugene, better known as Fegisin of Cicero, her sisters-in-law, Mrs. Jewel Morgan of Texas, Mrs. Bibiana Morgan of Vieux, Mrs. Yvette Morgan of New York, Mrs. Lilia Glory and Mrs. Mitchell Morgan, all of New York, 24 grandnieces, 31 grandnephews, 1 great-grandniece, 2 great-grandnephews. Also left to mourn the Morgan family in St. Lucia, Antigua, and St. Kitts and Nevis, the Larcher family in St. Lucia and Martinique, the Siffley family in St. Lucia and Martinique, the Alcindor family of Soufrière, the Dublin and Benjamin families of St. Lucia, England, Antigua, and St. Kitts, Adrian Johnson of Agard, the William family of Cicero, Goodlands, Derefort, Vanna, and Antigua, Jama Calixt, better known as Tennyson of Cicero, the Mayers family of St. Lucia and Antigua, Sam Flood, better known as Jukbois, and the Flood family of Deriso, the Hippolyte family of Cicero, the Allais family of Soufrière, Pastor Marcellus Henry of the Deliverance Baptist Church in Cicero, the Chandler family of Cicero and Goodlands, the Daniel family of Boiscache, Goodlands, and Tiroche, the Gira and Matthew family of Jacmel, the Sylvester family of Cul-de-Sac, the Willie and Joseph family of Cul-de-Sac, the Mathre and McQuilkin family, the Tench family of Bexar, the Odlum family of St. Lucia and Antigua, the Popo family of Goodlands, Lattock, and Derefort, the Paul and Forbes family of Cicero, the Charles family of Montgiraud, Groselet, Morshy, and Lafayette, the Lewis family of Castries, Ferdinand Henry and family of Delaide, the Meduse family of Grand Riviere Dennery, the Augustine family of Pave and Ravin Chabot, Vita Eugene of Canada, Margot Labadie of Lance Road, and Delphina James, better known as Daphne of Mon Road. Also left to mourn children of the deceased Rogers Joseph of Cicero, the Anthony family of Bexar, the husband's family of Castries, the Sonny family of Boisset Joseph, the family of the deceased Olenia of Lapwet Monrepo, Angela Hippolyte and Cecilia Mann of Florida, and many other relatives and friends. The funeral service for the late Joan Morgan, better known as Jean, will be held at the Deliverance Baptist Church in Cicero on Friday, November 10th, 2017 at 2 p.m. Her body will be laid to rest at the Shock Cemetery. Transportation will be available from the square, leaving at 1 p.m., and by the Cicero Primary School, leaving at 1:30 p.m. May she rest in perfect peace. Joan's body now lies at the Rambali's funeral parlor on Calvary Road, Castries.